After 10 years of hopelessness, this billionaire discovered an amazing cure from a black waitress. Jonathan Whittaker sat alone in a diner, the flickering neon outside casting soft shadows across the chipped formica tabletop. It was a far cry from the lavish gatherings in his penthouse where clinking glasses and laughter echoed. Now, at 42, the memories of a bustling life were fading like old photographs, dulled by the relentless grip of a rare illness that had taken almost everything from him. His heart ached with loneliness, a stark contrast to the wealth he once basked in. The people once drawn to him had faded, like morning mist, leaving only the overwhelming silence. That evening, snow whirled outside, swirling like his emotions as Lisa Williams stepped up to serve him. She had a warmth in her smile that felt reminiscent of home, a cozy embrace that unexpectedly stirred something deep inside him. As she poured his coffee, their eyes met, and something shifted. For the first time in years, Jonathan didn't feel like a specter wandering through life. Lisa was not just another face in the crowd, she was a spark of life full of laughter, and her genuine kindness instantly lifted the weight from his chest, if only for a moment. "Do you want a slice of pie with that?" Lisa asked, her voice cut through his thoughts like a sunbeam. "It's all right, just coffee," he replied, managing a smile. As they chatted, Lisa's dream of owning a flower shop unfolded like bright petals before him. The way she talked about it ignited a fire in his gut, a blend of envy and admiration. Jonathan found himself straddling two worlds: the life of comfort he was raised in and the struggles of those like Lisa, trapped by social and financial barriers. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But that spark they found so easily was soon threatened by a crisis sweeping through their neighborhood. An accident had left several families struggling to recover. The cafe was buzzing with anxious conversations, a microcosm of despair. It was during this pandemonium that Lisa revealed her family's secret: a recipe for a remedy that alleviated suffering. Hope flickered in Jonathan's heart, a light he hadn't allowed himself to feel for years. Yet, as he began to regain strength, a battle raged within him. Should he cling to this lifeline solely to benefit himself, or could he find the courage to use his wealth to elevate Lisa's dreams? Jonathan stared into his coffee, the swirling darkness mirroring his turmoil. Their worlds were colliding in a dance neither had asked for, tethered to a fragile bond that could either uplift or shatter them. Just as he was about to pull Lisa aside to make his choice clear, the door swung open. A gust of wind rushed in, and with it came an unknown figure whose presence could change everything they had begun to build. The tension thickened, hearts raced, and 1,000 unspoken questions lingered in the air, leaving both Jonathan and Lisa suspended in the moment, uncertain of what lay beyond. The figure that stepped through the door was tall and imposing, wearing a heavy black coat that flapped slightly in the cold wind. The chatter in the diner faded to a hush, all eyes falling on him as he scanned the room with sharp, keen eyes. Jonathan's heart pounded as a sense of foreboding settled over him. Was this stranger friend or foe? Lisa glanced over her shoulder, momentarily distracted from their conversation. That warmth that had enveloped them just moments before now felt fragile, like glass teetering on the edge of a table. Jonathan could sense her unease, her body stiffening slightly as she caught sight of the newcomer. "Is everything okay?" Jonathan asked, his voice low enough to keep it between them. The connection they shared felt tested, and he resisted the urge to reach across the table, to hold her hand to show he was there. She met his eyes, her gaze steady yet filled with questions, and then broke into a smile as if to reassure him that no matter what happened, they would face it together. But then, the man took a step closer, his boots clattering against the linoleum floor, a disruption that made Jonathan's skin prickle. As he approached the counter, the quiet buzz resumed like an electrical current. The man leaned against the diner's counter and ordered coffee, completely unconcerned with the tension he had just brought in with him. "Hey, you," he called out, directing his question at Lisa. "I heard you're the one with the cure for the pain around here. Heard it works wonders." The color drained from Jonathan's face. He didn't know who this man was, but the way his voice rolled off his tongue sent ice coursing through Jonathan's veins. Lisa looked taken aback, her eyes darting between Jonathan and the stranger. How had someone so menacing learned about their secret? I'm not," Lisa stammered, her hands trembling slightly. The man pressed on. "It's all right, I'm not here to cause trouble. I came to see what all the fuss is about." His lip curled in a crooked smile, and Jonathan clenched his jaw. He couldn't shake the feeling that this man was fishing for more. "I think you should leave," Jonathan finally said, his voice thick with protective instinct. He didn't even realize the words were out until Lisa glanced at him in surprise. The man turned slowly to face Jonathan, sizing him up. "And who are you to tell me what to do? I'm a friend." Jonathan figured more than who he was at that moment, but it felt like a dare, a challenge. The word left a bitter taste in his mouth. Friend? He had barely known Lisa a week. Nonetheless, it felt important to stand up against the threat. "What do you want?" Lisa finally spoke, her voice firmer now than moments before. There was an undeniable light in her eyes. Strength, perhaps? Jonathan felt a surge of pride for her, but it was short-lived. "Like I said, just curious," the man replied, his eyes flickering back to Jonathan with a hint of menace. "But maybe you two need to come to a better understanding. After all, secrets have a way of getting out." Jonathan's heart raced, his mind spinning. He knew that revelation could fracture everything: their bond, their plans, the hope they had been weaving together amidst their struggles. As the weight of the moment sank in, a new urgency began to swirl in Jonathan's heart. He needed to protect what he had discovered with Lisa, but didn't know how. The balance of fate was dangling before him, tipping dangerously close to chaos. "Maybe we should talk somewhere else," Jonathan suggested, glancing at Lisa for her nod of approval. But could they trust the shadows that lurked just outside their bright moment? They had uncovered something that could heal, but the price they might have to pay could be more than either of them was prepared for. As they stood there, the unknown loomed larger than life, and Jonathan felt the weight of the world pressing in on him again. Would they be able to navigate this storm together, or was this stranger the beginning of the end? The stranger leaned back, crossing his arms, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. Jonathan felt that smile slice through the air like a knife. How could someone look so calm while clouds of tension rolled in? He called out casually, "Where should we talk then? Diner booth? Or somewhere a little more private?" Lisa's eyes widened, and Jonathan could sense the adrenaline coursing through her, making her breathe quicker. She finally met his gaze, and with a small nod, a silent agreement passed between them. They both were in this together. "What do you know?" Jonathan asked, irritation flaring behind his resolve. "What do you really want from us?" The man chuckled softly, a sound devoid of warmth. "It's simple." All of this he gestured around the diner where people had started to return to their meals, though whispers still danced around the room like fireflies in a summer night. "It's fascinating. But make no mistake, I've got questions. And I believe you two have answers." Lisa shifted in her seat, clearly weighing her options. The coffee shop buzzed softly around them, a blanket over the suffocating energy in the air. Weeks of courage, problem-solving, and emotional resilience might just be tested here, and Jonathan felt a surge of protective fury igniting inside him. "We're just regular people," Jonathan said, the words coming out sharper than he intended. "We don't owe you anything." The man tilted his head, curiosity painted on his features. "Regular people?" he echoed, almost mockingly. "You're mixed up with something extraordinary." Secrets can't stay buried forever, especially when they hold the potential to change lives. Not everyone is out for profit like you, Lisa interjected quietly, but there was a fire behind her eyes. Some of us are just trying to make the world a little better. The stranger's smile faltered, replaced by a glint of annoyance. Betting on hope, are we? Hope works until it doesn't. His gaze locked onto Jonathan. I know you've tasted that bitterness before. That's why you're here. All this talk made Jonathan's gut twist. He didn't want to be dragged into someone else's game. But the looming danger of discovery made him question everything they had risked to create a safe haven in their small town. Let us step outside, Jonathan proposed, clenching his fists in determination. It felt like a challenge even to himself, but every second in this diner felt a beat closer to breaking. The man raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Now you're making me curious about the local's bravery. All right, outside it is. The tension thickened as the man strode toward the door. Once outside, the cold air hit Jonathan's face like a splash of water, and he instinctively stepped in closer to Lisa. The moon was a sliver in the darkened sky, barely casting light on the pavement beneath them. The man leaned against the wall, exuding confidence, his shadow forming a barrier. Let us make this easy, he continued, speaking slowly like a musician savoring each note. You tell me about the cure, and I can promise you a future. Don't resist, and I can make everything much simpler. I might just have some resources that could benefit you. Jonathan felt his heart thunder in his chest. What resources? And at what cost? The desire to protect Lisa surged within him, but this stranger held power he couldn't ignore. Why would we trust you? Jonathan shot back, the word trust full of doubt as it left his lips. Perhaps you shouldn't, came the nonchalant reply. But between me and you, I can tell you the truth about your little secret. In that moment, Jonathan's fear collided with desperate hope. The stakes had risen, and he realized they were at a precipice, either embracing the unknown together or losing sight of everything they had fought for. What lies did you hear? Jonathan challenged, his voice steady now, believing their bond would anchor them. As the man's smile returned, teasing the possibilities, Jonathan felt Lisa's hand brush against his. A grounding connection in the chaos that surrounded them. The man stepped forward, lowering his voice to a whisper. What if I told you I could give you answers and the means to truly change lives? Jonathan's breath caught in his throat. The weight of every choice crashed over him. They stood at the edge of revelation, the unknown pulling them closer. Could they step with fearless resolve, or would they retreat back into shadows, haunted by unease? And as that question hung in the air, a distant siren wailed, a foreboding omen of trouble they couldn't yet see. What would they choose? The stranger's words lingered in the cold night air, each one heavy with the weight of possibility and danger. Jonathan could almost feel the tension crackle like static electricity between them. He looked at Lisa, whose eyes glimmered with a mix of fear and determination. What do you mean, the means to truly change lives? Jonathan demanded, his voice low but firm. He was not about to be swept away by the allure of promises. The man straightened, leaning in as though inviting them into a conspiracy. Cures don't just come from isolated labs and sterile classrooms. They emerge from the heart of communities, from unexpected sources. Maybe someone like you, someone ordinary, has the key. Jonathan felt the pulse of his heart quicken. Could it be possible? Had all their late-night brainstorming led to something greater than they imagined? But doubt crept through the cracks. This man, with his sly smile and watchful eyes, felt just as likely to exploit them as to help. Why should we trust you? Lisa asked, her grip on Jonathan's hand tightening, bringing him back to her steadying presence. Because, the stranger said, shrugging as if the answer was obvious. Because it's either me or someone far worse. He glanced around, as if the shadows themselves were listening. People want your secret. They want it badly. You need guidance. I can offer you that. Jonathan glanced back toward the diner. Inside, nothing seemed amiss. Just a few patrons finishing their meals. But he felt it. The brewing storm of fate hovering over them, ready to strike without warning. Stop, he said, planting his feet. I want to know why it matters so much to you, what you're really after. What's in it for you? The stranger chuckled softly. Always the skeptic, huh? You really think I'd spill my guts without something in return? But let me make this clear. I'm interested in something bigger than profit. I want legacy. I want to shape the world. By manipulating us? Lisa asked, her voice steady, defiant. It's not manipulation if the end is for the greater good, is it? He offered, tilting his head, as if considering their moral compass instead of their fear. Jonathan felt torn. They'd worked so hard to cultivate their safe space. They were fighters, after all, aiming to spread hope rather than be washed away in deception. We'll never compromise what we've built, Jonathan warned, fire igniting his tone. Compromise is necessary, the stranger replied. But understand this, ignoring the whispers of the world around you might just drown you in darkness. He paused, measuring them with a gaze that seemed to pierce through layers of bravado. You can stay in your little bubble and keep pretending nothing is happening, or you can join me and grasp the future you dream of. A silence fell, thick as fog. Jonathan felt the world close in, suffocating under the weight of uncertainty. He looked at Lisa, who seemed lost in thought, her brow furrowed, weighing the pros and cons like a tightrope walker maintaining balance high above the ground. Just then, the distant sound of footsteps echoed down the street, interrupting the charged moment. 3 figures emerged from the shadows, heading straight for them. Jonathan's stomach dropped. Now who's coming? He whispered, anxiety knotting his gut. The stranger straightened, a glint sparking in his eye, as if welcoming the upheaval. He looked back at Jonathan and Lisa, a mix of amusement and challenge dancing across his face. It seems you're about to find out. With hearts racing and the balance teetering, Jonathan and Lisa stood at a crossroads, realization dawning that their lives were about to change forever. Who were the new arrivals? Were they allies or enemies? In that instant, everything hung in the balance, and one thing was clear: bravery would have to fight through the shadows to find the light. What choice would they make now? The shadowy figures drew closer, their outlines becoming clear against the dim glow of the streetlights. Jonathan felt Lisa's grip tighten around his hand, her breath quickening with every step the strangers took. Heart pounding, he couldn't shake the feeling that their decision was about to be forced upon them. Who are they? Jonathan murmured, urgency creeping into his voice as he tried to gauge the newcomers. The street felt smaller, as though the world around them conspired to center their lives at this very moment. I don't know, Lisa whispered back, her wide eyes darting from one figure to the next. But we need to be ready for anything. The 3 figures stopped a few paces away, their presence cloaked in an unsettling mix of intimidation and intrigue. The tallest among them, a solid man with a furrowed brow, studied Jonathan and Lisa closely. The others flanked him, their expressions unreadable in the low light, but their body language hinted at readiness, like coiled springs. Are you Jonathan and Lisa? The leader asked, his voice low and steady, cutting through the charged atmosphere. Jonathan nodded, instinctively moving closer to Lisa. Who's asking? We're here for the plans, your plans, the man said, glancing at the stranger who approached them first. He's been looking for you. The stranger smiled, his eyes glinting with mischief. I told you they needed a nudge. This is the perfect opportunity. What do you want? Jonathan's voice rose, solid resolve surfacing amidst the chaos. Answering that question will help shape your future, the leader replied cryptically, shifting his weight as though preparing for a lecture. If you're serious about making a real change, you need to understand the gravity of your position. Lisa's frown deepened. We've worked too hard to let anyone steer us away from our mission, she said fiercely. You're not scaring us. The leader raised an eyebrow, amusement dancing on his lips. You misunderstand. We're not here to scare you. We're here to equip you. Equip us? Jonathan echoed, skepticism coloring his tone. Why? The man took a step forward, his eyes holding a fierce intensity. Because a threat is on the horizon. Forces that will hunt you down for what you know. You hold something precious, something they want to bury. With that, the air crackled with urgency. A tangible fear gripped Jonathan's chest as he recalled the whispers about rival organizations aiming to capitalize on their progress. Had they really been naive enough to think they'd remain unnoticed? What do you know about us? Jonathan pressed, battling disbelief. The man glanced toward the shadowy stranger. He's not a danger, but he cannot shield you from what is coming. If you're serious about changing lives, you'll need allies, true allies. Lisa shifted closer to Jonathan, her voice barely a whisper. We might not have any choice, she breathed. If we don't accept their help. Jonathan's heart raced, torn between wanting to fight and the urgent need for protection. Imagine, a world where your discoveries empower families. A world where your work doesn't get crushed before it even sees the light, the leader continued, his voice low and compelling. What's the catch? Jonathan asked, eyes narrowing. No catch. Just a choice, the man replied, his voice smooth. Join us, and we teach you how to survive. Ignore us, and you risk everything you've built. A breeze swept through the alley, carrying a chilling air that seemed to whisper of the decisions being made. Jonathan looked at Lisa, searching her face for the answer. Was it worth the risk? Could they trust these strangers? As time hung in the balance, a siren echoed distantly, a sudden reminder of the world beyond their bubble. Jonathan was acutely aware that delay could mean danger. Would they stand their ground or venture into the unknown? A choice laid bare, but which path felt right? The stakes had never been higher, and they were about to leap into the unknown. Jonathan's mind raced like a train on an endless track. The weight of the decision pressed on him as if the air itself was too heavy to bear. He turned to Lisa, her face was drawn tight with uncertainty. They had always faced challenges together, but this felt different. This felt dangerous. The leader's intense gaze bore into them, sensing their hesitation. Time is not a luxury you have, he urged. Make a choice now, or risk losing everything. Jonathan, I don't like this. Lisa's voice quivered. Her hand squeezed his tighter, the anxiety coursing through them both palpable. What if this is a trap? It might be. But what if it's not? Jonathan countered, pushing down the rising tide of fear. What if they can really help us? A gnawing skepticism tugged at him. He glanced at the two figures standing silent behind their leader. They seemed more like sentinels than allies. What did they know? Who were they? The leader seemed to read his thoughts. We come from a place that believes in what you're trying to accomplish. Your mission doesn't end here. You're on the cusp of a breakthrough. Breakthrough? Jonathan echoed, the word sparking a flicker of hope. Or a breakdown. The man relaxed slightly, perhaps sensing the crack in Jonathan's armor. If you want to change the world, you need to learn how to protect it. The kind of work you're doing isn't just about science, it's about power. And power attracts danger. Lisa pulled in a shaky breath. So what's the plan then? You just swoop in and tell us how to fight against whoever's out there? Not quite. We'll teach you how to shield what matters most in all the ways that matter. The leader stepped forward, his words earnest. But first, you'll have to trust me. Jonathan felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Trust was a wild card in situations like this. The thrill-seeking life of a researcher had bred logic into his bones, but this was personal. This was about their future, about the lives they wanted to touch. He caught a glimpse of their dream, families transformed, illnesses conquered. The bigger picture flickered into view, pulsing with potential. The menacing nightlife hummed around them. Once vibrant, the hushed tones now felt cancerous, every rustle echoing threat. One wrong move and we could lose it all, he reminded himself. What if we say yes? Jonathan finally asked, steeling himself for the answer. What's the next step? The leader's smile returned, sharp and confident. We begin by introducing you to a network that has survived what you're about to face. You're not just scientists anymore, you're part of something bigger. Suddenly, the distant ring of a phone shattered the moment. The sound seemed almost out of place in the current chaos. It was Lisa's phone, buzzing insistently in her pocket. She fished it out, her eyes widening as she glanced at the screen. Who is it? Jonathan asked, straining to catch a look. It's Dr. Talbot, she answered, an edge of urgency creeping into her tone. He's calling about the presentation tomorrow. Stick to the original plan, he urged. We don't have time for distractions. But the fleeting look of worry on her face suggested otherwise. What if we're running out of time for something else? Her words hung in the air, heavy like the humidity of summer. Jonathan's throat constricted. Had they already crossed an invisible line, standing at a crossroads with the weight of the world on their shoulders? The leader watched, intrigued by their conflict, his expression almost expectant. What will it be? The path of uncertainty or the path of transformation? As Jonathan wrestled with the implications, a low growl of noise came, or was it a screech? From just beyond their alleyway. Shadows danced, and the warning shot from the siren lingered ominously in his mind. Jonathan. Lisa's breath hitched, her instincts flaring with desperation. What if we don't choose fast enough? Suddenly, the stakes felt even higher. Would their decision spark hope or lead them into the darkest corners of a battle they never anticipated? The air, thick with tension, bristled around them. Jonathan could feel the weight of impending decisions crashing down like waves. As the sirens drew nearer, the true nature of their choice loomed larger. What awaited them once they stepped into this uncertain alliance? Would they find strength together or falter under the shadows? Every heartbeat echoed what he knew deep down: something monumental was coming, and the clock was ticking. The streetlights flickered, casting eerie shadows against the brick walls of the alleyway. Jonathan's heart raced as he felt the pressure of time slipping through his fingers. He looked at Lisa, her eyes wide with anxiety, reflecting both hope and despair. What do we do? She asked, a tremor in her voice. Before he could respond, the leader stepped closer, his eyes darting around as if assessing the urgency of their surroundings. We need to move. Now. The longer we linger, the greater the risk. Jonathan swallowed hard, every instinct screaming at him to get away from this mess. But there was something about the leader's confidence, something that sparked a fire in his gut. Okay, he said, trying to sound decisive. We'll do it. We'll trust you. Lisa nodded, her hand still gripped firmly in his. Just let us stay together. No matter what happens. With a curt nod, the leader gestured for them to follow. The two silent figures behind him obeyed almost instantly, flanking the trio as they turned out of the alley. The world felt different, the air thick with electric tension. They moved down a narrow street, the sirens blaring ever louder. Jonathan's mind raced. He couldn't shake the thought of Dr. Talbot. What would the fallout be if they abandoned everything they had built for this risky leap? Lisa, he whispered, the presentation will figure it out later. If we don't make it through this, there won't be a presentation at all. Her words pierced through him, revealing the truth of their situation. They were at the edge of something huge, something that could change lives, even theirs. The leader glanced back, his expression unreadable. You're making the right choice. Follow me closely and trust the process. They rounded a corner, and the sudden bustle of a crowd surged around them, blending with the rising pitch of the sirens. It was chaos, but for Jonathan, it felt strangely invigorating. With every step, the thought of turning back faded. "What if I fail?" echoed in his mind, squeezing his heart painfully. "Fear is just another form of energy," the leader said, almost as if he could hear Jonathan's thoughts. "Use it. Let it propel you forward." They entered a dimly lit building, and Jonathan felt the tension shift. Walls lined with documents and flickering screens buzzed with energy, the urgency of an operation underway. "Welcome to the hub," the leader said, his voice a low rumble. "This is where preparation meets opportunity." Jonathan absorbed the sights around him, scientists talking feverishly, equipment buzzing, adrenaline pulsing in every corner. Could it be this easy? The promise of transformation lured him in. Yet, doubt still clawed at him. What's the first step? Connect with others. You'll need to collaborate and share resources. It's about building a community, the leader replied. You're both vital to this project. Behind him, the two figures moved closer, their faces serious, reflecting a conviction that Jonathan found compelling. They weren't just any assistants, they were guardians of something much larger. The room quieted briefly as several people turned their attention toward Jonathan and Lisa. Curious eyes examined them, whispers muffled behind hands. It struck Jonathan that they were no longer alone. They had stepped into a network, a collective of hopeful changemakers, all driven by a shared mission. A tall woman approached, her expression unreadable yet welcoming. "I'm Dr. Ramirez. I've heard about your work. We can use your insights." Suddenly, everything felt heavier. Was he ready? Did they even understand the risks involved? Before he could voice his concerns, the lights flickered, signaling an emergency. An alarm blared as fear crept into the air, biting at them. The crowd surged, a wave of anxiety flowing through the hub. "What's happening?" Jonathan shouted over the noise. Dr. Ramirez's eyes widened. "A breach. We need to secure the premises. Stay close." As they followed her lead, Jonathan's pulse quickened. Just when he thought he had stepped into a realm of possibility, chaos threatened to pull the rug out from under them. Could they really be a part of something revolutionary, or were they caught in a trap of deception and danger? Just as the doors slammed shut behind them, sealing an unknown fate, Jonathan felt the weight of the moment crashing into him. The reality of their situation hung in the air like smoke. He couldn't shake the feeling that shadows were trailing them, cloaked in uncertainty. Was this alliance the salvation they sought, or the harbinger of their downfall? Jonathan's breath hitched in his throat, and Lisa's grip tightened around his wrist as they followed Dr. Ramirez deeper into the building. The air felt charged with a sense of urgency, like a thunderstorm ready to break. He could hear voices rising around them, some frantic, some commanding, each one adding to the rising tide of confusion that flooded his thoughts. "Is everyone okay? We need to stay calm." Dr. Ramirez's voice cut through the noise, a lighthouse in a storm. Jonathan caught sight of her focus. She exuded an air of determination that resonated with him, fueling his fading courage. They finally reached a large room brimming with activity. Monitors displayed flashing red warnings, and shadows dashed between desks. Scientists and assistants worked feverishly, shuffling papers, typing furiously on keyboards, communicating in urgent whispers. "Here," Dr. Ramirez said, halting abruptly in front of a large table cluttered with paperwork. "I need you both to help us regroup. We have limited time." Jonathan felt a rush of adrenaline. "What do you need us to do?" he asked, trying to mask the uncertainty that churned within him. "Gather information about the breach," she instructed, her eyes sharp. "If we can identify where it's coming from, we can protect the integrity of our work. We're on the brink of something that can change lives, and I refuse to let anyone derail it." The gravity of her words hit him hard. They weren't just fighting for themselves, they were battling for something that could ripple through countless lives. He turned to Lisa, her expression a blend of fear and resolve. It was contagious. Together, they were in this. As they leaned over the table, papers scattered, Jonathan's mind flickered to what they had left behind. Was Dr. Talbot watching? What would he think of their decision? But with each piece of information they sorted through, the weight of doubt dissipated. He felt the stirrings of purpose. Majestic flashes illuminated the room as one of the scientists triggered a presentation slide, displaying data points and recent experiments. Jonathan squinted at the screen, an array of results stacked against one another. Suddenly, a chilling thought struck him. Lisa, what if this isn't just about us? What do you mean? What if the breach is a planned attack? What if someone doesn't want us to succeed? The implication hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. That's a dangerous line of thought, Jonathan. But, if that's true, her voice trailed off. It was a terrifying reality to consider, where everything they fought for could crumble before them. More alarms sounded, pulling him from his thoughts. Dr. Ramirez clapped her hands together, rallying the troops. Everyone, listen up. We have a problem. I need more eyes on the security feed. Our perimeter could have been compromised. We might be under surveillance. Jonathan exchanged a look with Lisa, and he noticed the faintest quiver in her lip. All they knew felt like it was teetering on the brink of collapse. Stay by my side, he said quietly, wanting to be her anchor amidst the chaos. Just then, a figure burst through the door, winded and wide-eyed. They're closing in. We need to act now. The urgency in their voice was pure panic, and that fear was infectious, spreading like wildfire in the room. Call in every available team. Secure exits A and B, Dr. Ramirez commanded. Jonathan's chest tightened as the realization sank in. They were in this together, but together also meant vulnerable. What if they couldn't escape? What if this was the end before they had a chance to even begin? The clamor of the room blended into a deafening hum as he and Lisa stood there, clutching each other in the chaos. In that moment, Jonathan realized they weren't just fighting for a chance at success, they were fighting for survival. Fear clawed its way back, but so did resilience. I'm not giving up, he whispered to himself. Not now. The atmosphere crackled, and as the alarms blared, the battle of wills had just begun. What was going to happen next? Would they find a way to uncover the truth before it was too late, or would they be silenced before their voices could be heard? The chaos surged around them, a storm of voices and frantic movement. Jonathan clutched the edge of the table, heart pounding. What if there's more going on here? He asked Lisa, his voice barely rising above the din. She met his gaze with fierce determination. We have to focus. If it's an attack, we need to know how they're getting in. Her words were laced with urgency. Each second felt stretched, like they were in a race against time. Right, Jonathan replied, shaking off the creeping fear. They pored over the documents, searching for patterns, anything that might indicate where the breach had originated. He noticed Lisa tracing her fingertips over a timeline. What's that? She pointed. It shows when the experiment started and the dates of discrepancies in data. Look here, here and here. Her brow furrowed as she connected the dots. It's all happening after certain key personnel left the project. Do you think? Jonathan hesitated. Are you saying someone could be feeding information to the outside? Lisa bit her lip in contemplation. It's possible. We need to tell Dr. Ramirez. Before they could act on their revelation, an engineer rushed up to Dr. Ramirez. The security feed is compromised. We've lost connection with half of our cameras. He looked frantic, glancing over his shoulder as if he expected someone to leap from the shadows. Dr. Ramirez cursed under her breath. We have to isolate those areas. No one should go in or out of the facility without being cleared. Doing what we can, another scientist shouted back, sweat glistening on his forehead as he worked at his station. The tension hung in the air, palpable. Jonathan could feel it clawing at him. What was their next move? Questions flooded his mind as he exchanged a glance with Lisa. They needed to act, but how? Wait, she said, her eyes widening suddenly. The data from this table, what if something was hidden in plain sight? She pulled a series of charts toward her, flipping through them quickly. These patterns, they don't match the timeline. These numbers don't make sense. Jonathan leaned closer, squinting at the figures as she pointed. You're right. Why would anyone input such erroneous data? It doesn't even correlate with our findings. Maybe it's not an error at all, Lisa murmured, her voice trembling with realization. What do you mean? Jonathan asked, leaning in. What if whoever is doing this is trying to discredit our work? They want to make it look like we're failing, she replied. The implications rattled him. If they were discrediting the project, it would not only end everything they had worked on but could also threaten lives in the greater scheme of things. Suddenly, the intercom crackled to life. All personnel, report to the West Wing. Immediate evacuation protocol is in effect. The alarm blared again, shaking the walls of the room. A feeling of deep dread settled in Jonathan's chest. We can't leave now. He shouted over the noise. We have to stay and expose this. Lisa's hand clenched tightly around his. Jonathan, if we don't get out, we might not make it to tell anyone anything. Dr. Ramirez stepped forward, an unwavering force. We need to make a choice. Stay and fight or evacuate and come back for the data. The weight of it all crashed down on Jonathan. Stay and risk everything or retreat and regroup? He felt the room pulse with desperation, everyone waiting for either his or Lisa's guidance. Just then, a loud crash echoed from the far end of the building. Jonathan looked toward the sound. What was that? Dr. Ramirez's eyes darkened. It could be our last chance or our biggest mistake. Jonathan's mind raced. They had to decide, and they had to do it now. Would they head back toward the danger or make a break for the exit while they still could? The air crackled with impending doom, and Jonathan wondered if they would make it through, one way or another. Would their pursuit of truth ultimately lead them to safety or trap them further in danger? Chaos engulfed the room as the implications of their choices cascaded through Jonathan's mind. The thunderous crash echoed ominously, igniting a primal instinct to survive. He knew they were on the brink of something monumental, but the endgame loomed dark and uncertain. Get out. Now. Dr. Ramirez barked, shattering his thoughts. The urgency in her voice rallied the scientists, and they surged toward the exits. But Jonathan couldn't move. He couldn't just let their work vanish. It wasn't merely data, it was lives, hope, everything they had strived for. Lisa. He shouted, the weight of the moment strangling him. What do we do? Fight or flight, Jonathan? She replied, her voice steady as she clutched his arm. If we stay, we might never reach anyone outside this facility. But what about the data? We need to expose what's happening. Jonathan argued, desperation rising in his chest. It's not worth our lives. She implored, her eyes reflecting fire and fear. We can't save anyone if we're not there to do it. The tension in the air buzzed around them like a live wire, and Jonathan felt that unbearable yet undeniable pull towards the truth. But he also felt the harsh reality settling in, survival meant outsmarting their opponents, not confronting them head-on. Okay, fine. He took a deep breath, forcing his racing heart to calm. Let us regroup and escape. But we're coming back together. The scene erupted into urgency again as they turned toward the exit. Through the West Wing. Dr. Ramirez shouted, waving them onward. As they dashed through the convoluted corridor, an alarm blared in sync with their frantic footsteps. Lisa held his hand tightly, the reality of their plight crashing down heavier with each step. They bolted toward safety, but a gnawing uncertainty lingered. Would they really make it out unscathed? Just as they reached the last door, a figure emerged from the shadows a colleague Jonathan recognized. "Kyle!" he shouted, but before he could warn him, a shadowy figure lunged forward, grabbing Kyle by the collar. "Stop right there!" the assailant growled, his grip fierce and commanding. Jonathan felt rage and fear collide in his chest. "Let him go!" he roared, adrenaline flooding his system. Lisa quickly pulled him back, grounding him. "We can't intervene like this. Our lives depend on our choices. This isn't the time." In a heartbeat, Jonathan watched as Kyle struggled, panic evident in his eyes. "You can't let them take me. They know everything about Run," Jonathan shouted, shoving Lisa into motion, unwilling to lose another piece of their world. They sprinted through the exit, the world outside blurring before him. A biting wind struck Jonathan's face as he gasped for air, uncertain whether they would stop chasing him. As they reached the street, the sirens echoed louder, the commotion of first responders ringing in their ears. Jonathan turned back, scanning the building as if he could feel Kyle's fear lingering behind those walls. "We have to go back. We can't leave him," he argued. "Jonathan. We can't." Lisa pulled him away, her voice urgent as she urged him forward. "We need to think clearly. If we go back, we risk everything. Will be next." Jonathan weighed her words, and against the backdrop of flashing lights and chaos, he felt a flicker of clarity. He remembered their mission, the dreams they had begun to weave not just for themselves but for so many others. "All right," he conceded, knowing this was for the greater good, for the families and lives at stake. "But we need a plan. We go back in a few hours, after the chaos dies down. We gather allies." Lisa nodded, resolve glowing within her. "We'll expose what they've done, Jonathan. But first, we have to survive this." As they dove into a nearby alley to put distance between themselves and the whirlwind of chaos, Jonathan felt a spark of hope flicker alive within him. They could regroup, create a strategy, and save not only their work but possibly their friends too. "Stay close," Lisa whispered, and Jonathan held her hand tighter. They were in this together, navigating an uncertain future. Stitched from fragments of hope, bravery, and the will to fight against the tide. Jonathan's heart surged with something stronger than fear, an unyielding determination to turn the darkness they faced into a beacon of light. Together, they could forge a path not just for themselves, but for the lives yearning for salvation through their dreams. They paused for a moment, taking deep breaths amidst their following, and as they gazed into each other's eyes, a promise was sealed without words. They would rise from this. In that defining moment, Jonathan felt the enormity of their journey ahead. It wouldn't be easy, and the shadows would loom larger, but they would meet it head-on, united in purpose. He turned and spoke into the night, "This is just the beginning." Together, they stepped into the unknown, guided by an indomitable spirit that could no longer be silenced. Now, you have a choice to make. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories filled with transformation and inspiration. Leave a like right now, one click can feed the algorithm that shares these burning tales with the world. Comment your reactions and feelings about how Jonathan and Lisa faced their fears, because your voice matters. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear these powerful truths. Let us spread hope together and make a difference.